So, a while ago, I made a video explaining that Vanessa and Abby aren't Elizabeth. You should watch that because I was onto something, although most of the points will be brought up in this video as well. To summarize, I said Vanessa was written as a parallel to Michael Afton, while Abby was a parallel to the crying child. And this is where the spoilers for the FNaF 2 movie come in. A lot of them, like so many, just go watch it first. Also, expect discussions of murder as comes with the franchise, abuse, and neglect. Okay. So, honestly, the movie didn't change my takes that much. It seemed to change everyone else's, but that's exactly what I'm going to talk about. I even kind of predicted a few things, I think. Look, this movie was unpredictable, but I did make a joke about Abby getting possessed, and I said I was worried about Elizabeth appearing in the movies because I felt like they'd mess up her characterization. Elizabeth isn't in the movies, but we'll get there. I made a chart, and by God, we are going to go over every single comparison in this, except for the ones that aren't related to the movies, but I connected for documentation, like novel and game Elizabeth. I made so many headshots for this, by the way. I feel weird using headcanons to draw real people, so I found so many references. The FNaF movie loves close-ups, but people love not putting them on the wiki. Why did I do this? Can I just say everybody has some really unflattering photos? Good lord. All the other game and book characters will just be personal designs. There's a constant argument on whether or not the movie characterization matches the games, especially considering the fandom has a tendency to soften the flaws of a character they like. Still, characters like Michael and Charlie, who are objectively a lot more morally reprehensible than people give them credit for, are still characterized differently. And yeah, I'll back that up. That's what the chart's for. Oh yeah, and for the structure of this video, each movie character will get a section dedicated to discussing their narrative parallels. Part 1. Mike Schmidt. Mike Schmidt is annoying and he sucks. No, okay, not really. I just don't love his characterization in the second movie. He learns in the first movie to listen to Abby, and then he doesn't do that. And he doesn't let Vanessa talk, but gets mad at her for not sharing details of her incredibly triggering childhood. She didn't even know all this shit would come up again. Look, I'll blame it on the movie's confusing characterization, and confusing plot, and confusing pacing. Sorry, I'm gonna be a hater during this video. Anyway, Mike Schmidt isn't just here to tell us that, oh, there's a night guard in FNaF 1 named Mike Schmidt and he's just some guy. The thing I think people don't understand is that multiple people can represent one character and that the genders also don't have to match. It's okay, a man can take a woman's place in the narrative, a woman can take a man's place in the narrative. It's cool. Mike Schmidt shares aspects with several characters. Let's reference the chart. I love my chart. You're gonna see it a lot. I connected him to game Michael Afton, novel Charlie Emily, and game Vanessa A. God, this is confusing. Can we give people different names? Can we please? Arguably, I think, of all the characters, Mike is the closest to novel Charlie. Unlike Mike, Charlie is a twin, and this seems to be the only universe that Sammy exists. Sammy is referred to as Charlie's little brother, indicating that she does consider herself his older sibling, even if it's not by much. Charlie and Mike are both older siblings with missing brothers, and most importantly, their missing brother affects their arc as a protagonist. Sometimes. Charlie forgets Sammy exists in the Silver Eyes and barely acknowledges that he's alive in the fourth closet. Similarly, Mike references Garrett one time in the second movie and then never again. The missing brother arc is most important in the Twisted Ones and the first FNaF movie. Throughout the Twisted Ones, Charlie dreams about Sammy, eventually leading her to the unfinished second Freddy's location. While Mike dreams of Garrett consistently throughout his life, his dreams change when he's in the restaurant. Similarly, dreams of his brother drive him to Freddy's. And, move the plot along. Garrett and Sammy are plot devices with names and faces. It is really funny that Mike said dreaming worked for him. Dude, it didn't work for over a decade, and then you got closure when ghosts were involved and the guy who took your brother confessed to it. Don't lie. Charlie and Mike have matching narrative structures: missing brothers, a cryptic Afton introducing them to the restaurant, the realization of where the kids are from a friend, to Afton's eventual spring locking. There seems to be a universal Afton trait of wanting to be cryptic and mysterious, but immediately info dumping. I'm aware Vanessa does keep secrets, but she also drops the missing children's incident in like 5 minutes and then immediately changes the subject. Queen shit. The first FNaF movie definitely had a similar narrative structure to The Silver Eyes. Naturally, I expected the second movie to match, and it kind of does. The animatronics are loose now, the main character has to eventually confront them to figure out why. Things get convoluted at the end, and you start to realize you don't know who's who. There's too many of you people. Notably, they both are protected by classic animatronics when encountering new ones, which is also a point for Abby in her section. What I didn't expect was this movie's weird parallels to The Fourth Closet, a book that famously did not go over well. Naturally, when something does not go well, you should try it again. At least, so far, no one's a robot. But there's still time. In The Fourth Closet, Elizabeth tries to kill Charlie because Henry and William seem to care more about Charlie than Elizabeth, no matter what she does. In the second FNaF movie, Michael tries to kill Mike because Vanessa seems to care more about Mike than him, no matter what he does. There might also be something with Elizabeth literally being a version of Charlie and Michael having the same name as Mike, but I don't know. Charlie's role in the narrative is literally just given to Mike. They're brought to Freddy's by an Afton, introduced formally by an Afton, stay despite their desires not to because of a missing brother, Springlock William, try and fail to leave Freddy's behind them, deal with one of William's very jealous kids. They're also quite naive characters throughout the narrative. They don't really understand William's impact on other people. Charlie at first doesn't believe that Elizabeth could be Circus Baby because a sweet little girl can't be the kind of person Circus Baby is. Similarly, Mike fails to understand Vanessa's avoidance of her past or why she struggles to reveal information. Mike and Charlie have been severely neglected, but neither of them understand how characters like Vanessa and Elizabeth could be put in bad positions, and may even want to stay in them as a result of their upbringing. Vanessa is telling lies, Elizabeth is killing people. That makes more sense than unpacking everything they have going on. Charlie is less of an asshole about it, but I digress. Mike Schmidt is just Charlie from the novels, but without the bonus connection to Freddy's with her dad as the co-founder. Why? I don't know. But he's also like 1/3 of game Michael Afton. I don't know if I'm using the bullet points to see how much of Michael Afton Mike is, only including the 3 main Michael Aftons. He's like 22% of Michael Afton? Confused yet? With the amount of shit Michael Afton goes through, he seems like a smart guy. Unfortunately, they didn't multiply his brain cells when they split him into several guys, and now they're all stupid. Anyway, Mike Schmidt is a Michael Afton. One of many, I guess. Michael Maxing. Michael Afton is heavily implied to be Mike Schmidt in the games because he seems to use the nickname Mike consistently. Mike Schmidt is also fired for the same reason as Fritz Smith, who was hired way too quickly to be a normal employee. As in, they hire him that morning. Fritz Smith is surprisingly important to this video, but not relevant enough. I'll get there. Beyond quite literally being an earlier version of Michael Afton, that just some security guy named Mike from FNaF 1, Mike Schmidt gets a few of the same mental illnesses. They distributed the illnesses equally since Game Michael had too many of them. Mike blames himself for the death of his brother instead of the guy who is clearly actually responsible. Michael A. similarly blames himself for the death of his brother, even though, regardless of what exactly you believe did the crying child in, William was at least indirectly responsible. Babysit your damn child. Michael Afton's relationship with the crying child, who I'm going to call Cassidy and everyone else is going to have to deal with it, I have to listen to the name Dave, okay? Definitely seems closer to Mike's relationship with Abby. Mike cares about Abby, sure, but he's also been forced to parent her way before he's ready. We don't know the Afton family situation all that well, but we do know that William barely appears in the FNaF 4 minigames and never interacts with his children. Mike's frustration from parenting Abby when he really just wants to have his old, easier life culminates in the deal that nearly gets Abby spring-locked. Michael A's bullying likely came from a similar place of frustration and ultimately ended in his brother experiencing what is probably a spring-lock failure. If not, it's an incident with the spring locks. Neither of them really take the time to understand their siblings, and this is what is ultimately their downfall. The only difference is that Mike gets to take it back. I am annoyed that the Golden Freddy Kid doesn't really get to be morally dubious anymore, and there's no dramatic reveal where he admits that yes, Mike traded Abby for Garrett. I want siblings to fight on screen. Long, messy ones that last more than half a second. FNaF 3 movie, please. The similarities between Mike and Michael seem to end with their sibling relationships. Both of them have a missing sibling. Michael seems guilty enough to risk his life for his missing sister. Mike also puts himself in danger in order to find out what happened to Garrett. Both of them were encouraged, manipulated by outside forces. Both of them lash out after having to raise their siblings, and this leads to a springlock incident. Narratively, Mike is Charlie. Sibling-wise, Mike is Michael. In a kind of silly, swapped role sort of way, Mike is also Game Vanessa. I'll call her Ness since she seems to go by that in the games. Mike really isn't all that much like Ness, but I think it's fun to compare them since movie Vanessa seems to share a lot of attributes with Game Michael. It's an elaborate swap AU. Ness's last initial is A, and may or may not have an abusive dad named Bill, depending on whether or not Glitchtrap fabricated that part of her backstory or not. Don't worry about it. But she's not confirmed to be an Afton. It's very possible that both she and Mike are unrelated parties that just happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. On a less speculative note, they're both security guards that have not slept and are very cranky about it, especially because they have to manage small children who do not want to listen to them. These situations are vastly different, but there could be a slight comparison there. Mike Schmidt is, to put it simply, an amalgam of FNaF protagonists without the specific familial connections to Freddy's. Maybe they thought it'd get too redundant or be too much to cover in one character. But I doubt the former. These are very redundant movies. But I don't like Mike Schmidt, so let's stop talking about him. Part 2. Vanessa Shelly. I like Vanessa, but more so in the way that I think she is full of underutilized potential. Despite the fact that I'm definitely being a hater, this video isn't a movie critique, so I won't be talking about that a lot. There will be a lot of speculation on Vanessa since we don't know exactly what her deal is. I still don't think she's Elizabeth. I saw Circus Baby, I gasped, I squealed. If Vanessa turns out to be Elizabeth, I'm going to be so angry. Vanessa is Michael Afton. Like, literally, she's more Michael Afton than Michael Afton. I hate this. And yeah, that means Michael Afton is dating Michael Afton. Good, he needs that self-love. When I was making a bingo card of movie predictions, I wrote canon self-cessed because I predicted the little outing in the trailer was a date. We don't know exactly what Vanessa did. She probably did a lot of work in the Force to keep William's crimes under wraps. She probably wasn't actively killing anyone for William. It's never brought up, and she seems way too quick to help William's victims if she gets the chance. We do know she knew about the murders and harbors guilt about it. It's never confirmed in the games that Michael knew about the murders, but he does reference working at Circus Baby because William asked him to.
I put her back together, just like you asked me to.
Also, like I said, if Michael is Fritz Smith, he likely got the job because William planted him. He gets it way too quickly. I doubt he was a cop like Vanessa and did more groundwork. There's an ambiguous event at the FNaF 2 location. It doesn't matter for the sake of this video what it is. Just that Michael took the night shift immediately after. To clean up bodies, maybe? The similarities in their roles come from the way they both hide William's crimes from the police. With ambiguous regrets he lords over their heads. I feel like if this kid was Cassidy, they would have said so by now. But if he is, Vanessa's definitely the one that killed him. considering Abby doesn't seem to draw him as one of the victims. But both of them do turn against William at some point. It's hard. They both seem to experience hallucinations as a result of everything. And the guilt they harbor seems to convince them both they're similar to William. Vanessa has to outwardly say that she isn't like him. The fact that she feels the need to say it at all is telling. And Michael, of course, has his "they thought I was you." The second movie actually sealed the deal for me. Vanessa gets possessed by Charlie, her best friend who she cared about. Michael, of course, gets possessed by Ennard in a much more gruesome way. But Ennard contains Elizabeth, the spirit of his sister. They didn't just fourth closet Mike, they sister location to Vanessa. Abby even compares getting unpossessed to throwing up, which is kind of what happens in sister location. Now we just need a cool post-scoop Vanessa, or what's the point? Now, I don't really like Vanessa Beth, but I am going to give it its due service. It definitely seems like if Vanessa is any incarnation of Elizabeth, it's Elizabeth from the games. Beyond being William's daughter and Michael's sister, they both have an encounter with Circus Baby. More importantly, they seem to have similar relationships with William, in which he uses sporadic, shallow gestures of affection to get them to obey him. "Don't you know I care about you? Didn't you make her just for me?" Vanessa isn't much like Circus Baby from the novels, other than the fact that they're both William's daughter and accomplice. Vanessa is a little bit more like her game counterpart than Mike is, but not by much, mostly because Ness has her whole security breach going on, and there's no way we have AI and all that shit in 2002. But if you squint your head, Vanessa A can also be dating Vanessa A. Beautiful writing. Vanessa and Ness have the same name and is about as close as you can get to the same appearance. You know, with the transition from video game graphics to actress. Ness is William's reluctant follower, something Vanessa definitely reflects. I wouldn't give their similarities much merit if not for the fact they were both possessed by animatronics. I do think that Vanessa's possession is closer to Ennard's possession of Michael. Ness is possessed by a sentient AI copying William. Michael is getting possessed by someone he knows that was once human. Michael and Vanessa were possessed at their lowest point, when they have no one else, but the least they can do was help someone they cared about. Someone they failed because they let them rot alone in an abandoned facility, even if they feasibly couldn't have done anything else. Yeah, Vanessa is more Michael than anyone else. But she does seem to have the same problem as Charlie in the fourth closet. She doesn't want William's attention on her, but it is, more so than it is on the antagonist, who is more than a little bitter about it. The smallest comparison Vanessa has seems to be with Cassidy. They're not very alike, but they're both Afton children who were in a coma at some point. I really only bring this up because the line, "I don't know if you can hear me," is brought up in both scenarios. This movie has so many characters. It's time for the third protagonist of the series. Part 3. Abby Schmidt. Abby still isn't Elizabeth, but they do have a few more similarities now, I'll give you that. We have reached the point where Abby and Gabe Michael are connected, which is upsetting to me. Abby deserves so much better. Abby is still, in my opinion, closest to paralleling Cassidy, especially considering we may not have a Cassidy in general. So far, it seems like the photos in the Afton house include 2 children, but mostly Vanessa. Ouch. Unless Cassidy is the little boy ascending to the heavens, or the blonde boy. He'll have a section later. Most of Abby's similarities to Cassidy are in Mike's section. Her parentified older brother tries to take care of her, but things ultimately end in a springlock accident. Abby, similarly, is neglected by her Aunt Jane, just as Cassidy is neglected by William, thus the need for the whole parentified brother thing. Abby and Cassidy both have their little yellow bears and animatronics best friends. Cassidy's are plushies, but hey, they're plushies of the animatronics. Admittedly, the new movie did not give me much Abby to work with. She doesn't have much agency outside of what people manipulate her into doing. But isn't that the most Cassidy thing ever? His life was never his. He was a victim of pure circumstance. And then his dad decides to go killing people, and that becomes his problem. He's dragged into other people's issues and insecurities, and now what? Also, Cassidy is heavily associated with the line, "It's me," and there is an equivalent in the second movie.
Charlotte?
No, Shelly. It's me, Abby.
There might also be something to be said about being manipulated by their animatronic friend, but I don't know. While Abby doesn't share nearly as many parallels with novel Charlie as Mike does, they still have a few things in common. Of course, as I mentioned in Mike's section, the classic animatronics defend both of them from new animatronics. There's a specific reference to the silver eyes in the first movie, in which Abby hides from Foxy. This mirrors a scene where Charlie does pretty much the exact same thing. Abby is also nearly spring-locked by Ella, who was the original robot Charlie. Charlie and Abby both have a missing brother, although Charlie's experiences with Sammy seem to match Mike's with Garrett more. Both of them are chasing old ghosts that bring them back again and again to Freddy's, despite the protests of those close to them. The new movie also provides us with the additional comparison that Abby and Charlie both had their identities used to harm their loved ones. While Elizabeth pretended to be Charlie, Charlie possesses Abby in order to attack Vanessa. The points between Abby and Elizabeth haven't changed much except for one. As always, Abby can be an anagram for baby. And Abby is also the protagonist's little sister and associated with pink. I do think the pink thing is just classic conservatism. Little girls wear pink. And while Abby is also a little sister, she's not Elizabeth. She's not an antagonist, she's not a robot, and there's no reason for her to, steal an identity or whatever. The new movie does offer what could be an Abby-Elizabeth parallel. Charlie uses Abby's voice to manipulate Vanessa, just as Ennard does with Elizabeth's voice. The situations are a bit different, but it's still generally to lure someone out of hiding. Using someone's voice to manipulate a protagonist isn't an uncommon thing in FNaF, but Elizabeth did do it first, so I consider it her thing. Abby isn't really Elizabeth. She's not really Michael either, but they both like to draw and trust an animatronic that eventually ends up possessing them. One of these scenarios is so oddly specific I had to mention it, but I don't think this amount of parallels mean much of anything. Abby is still meant to represent, in my opinion, the good ending of the bite. What if you were a little bit older and a little bit smarter and you got to take it back? What if everything turned out okay? Not everyone gets to say the same. Part 4. Michael Afton. Ennard is not in there. Flat out. He's weird because he was told how to look and act if he wants affection and he doesn't know how to be his own person. It's important to note that while Michael Afton is, of course, Michael Afton, he is also Elizabeth Afton. Elizabeth seems to be an only child in the novel trilogy, so I guess he's just like the lead Afton children in the other two continuities, but not the lead Afton child in this one because that role definitely goes to Vanessa, who has more screen time. Weird. From my notes, he's pretty evenly split. He's obviously Michael Afton, it's in the name, and they have the same fuck-ass middle part. I've been using my little drawings, but if I put the sprite on the screen, Michael has the same haircut. He's also, really smiley and strange, and if you mess around with the FNaF 4 audio, you can hear the Foxy Bully giggling. They're both giggling and kicking their feet and writing their devious little deeds in their diaries. Most of what we know about Gabe Michael is implied, but he has this scoff at being compared to his father. Exasperation, not surprise. They both view themselves as extensions of their fathers, and why wouldn't they? Gabe Michael definitely helped William out at some point, although he was probably less happy about it, since most of his characterization seems to range from absolutely fucking miserable to dry humor. He says he wants a circus baby just like William asked him to. Although movie Michael Afton looks miserable, the natural state of Michael Afton is soaking wet. Game Michael spends his time helping his dad, dies, and then spends his afterlife hunting his dad down. He doesn't have his own agency, and he never did. Both Michaels have such a low self-esteem that they don't think they have a purpose outside of William, whether that's helping him or stopping him. They have a purpose. On a less dramatic note, Game Michael, as I said earlier, is probably Fritz Smith, and probably planted there by William. There's an ambiguous incident in FNaF 2, as I said. It doesn't matter if it's the DCI or Charlie's death, but I kind of doubt it's the latter. Regardless, Michael's hiring so soon after makes me think he was trying to cover the incident up. Just like Movie Michael's attempts to cover up Charlie's ever-growing kill count. Neither of them actually seem to kill people. Even though half the town will be dead by morning sounds like a bomb threat and not, after we kill you, we'll send a bunch of slow animatronics to specific houses to kill people after we monologue. This is what I meant, by the way, about Fritz Smith coming back but not being relevant enough. I think Michael should have gone by Fritz in the movie. I know that would have been confusing, but do you think this movie makes sense to anyone who isn't a fan? Don't worry about confusing. This is all confusing. Now, it's important to note that Michael is Michael, but he is also Elizabeth, but specifically Elizabeth from the novels. He doesn't line up with Elizabeth from the games, other than the fact they've both spent, 20 years in a basement. Elizabeth was in the sister location for, at least 5-ish years. And Michael, you can tell, okay? He has not gone outside. The only person he's spoken to is Charlie. And I don't think she's a representation of normal. Elizabeth from the novel trilogy is William's sidekick in a way. She seems to take more direct orders and works closely with Springtrap and later William when he gets extracted. Michael doesn't, but he wants to. He wants to really badly. Similarly, both of them just kind of appear. Elizabeth has an excuse. She was locked up until Charlie freed her and she returned to her father. Michael, like I said, he was in the basement. Elizabeth's resentment toward Charlie is partially because she views herself as more of a tool than a real person. She was once human, but Charlie is artificial. Why does Charlie get to be real and Elizabeth is the tool? Michael is pretty similar. Vanessa bot allegations aside, he doesn't consider himself his own person. He just doesn't understand why Vanessa doesn't have to live the same way. They both want to be enough for William to be his favorite because it's not like they have anyone else. Charlie resents Elizabeth. None of Charlie's friends like her. Michael's sister left him and found a new family. I also wrote, something is wrong with them, I don't know what, because despite their tendency to lore dump, their writing is so bizarre, I'm not quite sure what their problem is. They both definitely have somewhat of a superiority complex. I'm the better one because I listen. It's a false sense of entitlement, but it's present in the way they speak to the protagonists. Kind of. They're both obviously faking it to hide self-esteem issues. Fool, I see through your facade or whatever. What cats? Someone wring them out and leave them to dry. Hey, sorry this video is deranged. Don't click off. I can get so much worse. Part 5. Charlie Emily. I am going to call her Charlie. You can't stop me. They robbed her of her cool mask nickname, and I think it's irritating that they imply the only Charlie that goes by Charlie is the robot recreation. All Charlies are masculine. I don't make the rules, I just observe them. Charlie is the only universal constant on this chart until we get a confirmation as to whether or not Elizabeth is in the movies. Shockingly, the character she is closest to is neither Charlie. Instead, it's Elizabeth, the other Elizabeth, the video game one. Elizabeth and Charlie are also in the basement being Circus Babies or the FNaF 2 pizzeria. And to leave, they need a vessel. To leave, they need to blend in. I genuinely thought Charlie was going to possess Vanessa right off the bat. I was quoting Sister Location. Elizabeth and Charlie are angry. They want to escape. And to do so, they're willing to possess and kill whoever they need to. They're both willing to hurt people they used to care about, who both happen to be Afton kids, all grown up. They grew up and left Elizabeth and Charlie behind. Elizabeth and Charlie have weird relationships with William. Elizabeth switches from working against him to working with him, assuming she thinks Michael is William. Maybe she knew and was working with William the whole time. Charlie isn't that much different. She isn't working with William, but she's definitely working with Michael, who is doing whatever he thinks William wants him to do. Yes, Michael runs away from her in the beginning, but Charlie references a new friend who is helping her. And Mike later explains that he popularized FazFest so Charlie could have a cover to kill a ton of people. This isn't as well organized as a plan of what Elizabeth would have come up with, but whatever. Both Charlie and Elizabeth are antagonists, but they were both once little girls. They use the voices of the little girls, Elizabeth with her own voice and Charlie with Abby, to manipulate people. They both died, but the incidents were treated as accidents that led to the restaurant closing. They weren't just reported missing or killed, they were blamed for their own death. But there's also something with the puppetlings being like mini Renas, but I don't know how to vocalize that. I've seen a lot of comparisons between Charlie and Cassidy as well, but I couldn't find many. Charlie's death was partially the product of neglect, and Vanessa harbors some guilt, but she's hardly as responsible as Michael was for Cassidy. However, both their deaths were public spectacles before they were abandoned in their respective restaurants that closed immediately after the incident. Cassidy is definitely Golden Freddy, though, and Charlie doesn't have much in common with him, unless you believe the one you should not have killed is Golden Freddy. It's unclear whether or not the vengeful spirit is the one saying,
"I don't hate you, but you need to stay out of my way."
But I don't think he is. I think it's Charlie speaking to the vengeful spirit. Telling the guy in hell to stay out of your way is strange. So I think it's more likely that Charlie is speaking to the person who created the hell. But I wanted to pay service to the comparison of Charlie and the one you should not have killed. Charlie can also control the toys, and the vengeful spirit can control the animatronics. Similarly, Charlie's vengeful attitude matches Michael from the games. William killed them, and now they have to go feral about it. It's the only solution. When compared to the other Charlies, movie Charlie is more like her game counterpart. Book Charlie noticeably dies at 3, and movie Charlie definitely does not do that. It's unclear about game Charlie. They're both the marionette and the main antagonist of the second movie and game, respectively. I guess each game doesn't really have a main antagonist all the time, but Charlie is by far the most consistent of a threat, so I'd say it counts. Charlie is likely the one in the games to say, "I don't hate you, but you need to stay out of my way," and Charlie says the exact same thing in the movies. Movie and game Charlie also both seem to be more powerful than the other ghosts, with more control and awareness. Movie and game Charlie also get thrown in the torment nexus with multiple Afton kids. Game Charlie has to help Cassidy move on and moves from helping Michael to making his life worse, depending on her mood. Movie Charlie was Vanessa's best friend, but now she resents her. And she moves from helping Michael to making his life worse, depending on her mood. Book Charlie is only in the torment nexus with one Afton, the blonde one. But novel and movie Charlie are the ones more explicitly stated to be victims of neglect. Game Charlie was probably neglected too, but it's less explicitly stated. Also, all Charlies are weird and gender. That's important. Take notes. Part 6. Garrett Schmidt. Oh, Garrett, the world's specialist plot device that they forgot about in the second movie and instead introduced several new characters. Yeah, Michael is Elizabeth. Yeah, Charlie is also Elizabeth. But Garrett? Also Elizabeth. They're both the protagonist's missing younger sibling. They died but were never found. As a result, the main character has a drive to find them, even going so far as to ignore the threat of death, something others take advantage of. Locating them is the primary drive of the first FNaF movie and sister location. They're also both associated with the color red, and red is less of a gendered color association like pink is. Garrett being a Cassidy parallel isn't without merit, however. They are both the little sibling of a guy named Mike. They serve as Mike's primary connection to Freddy's and the source of his guilt. Similarly, Garrett parallels Sammy, the other missing little brother in this franchise. They're both just sort of plot devices that appear in dream sequences that are only mentioned when it serves the plot. They left Garrett and Sammy at soccer practice, and because they forgot Garrett, this is a really short section. Sorry, Garrett. Part 7. Kid that still doesn't have a name. They have the perfect setup to give him a name. Why didn't they give him a name? He's not on the chart, but of all the Golden Freddy kids, Blondie here looks the most like Michael Brooks. They're not similar at all, but I find that really funny. I maintain that it's odd that Golden Freddy Kid wasn't drawn on Abby's drawing. If we assume Garrett is the red shirt kid and the kid with the top hat is Gabriel, which I've seen most people do. We don't know how he died, but there is a lot of ambiguity around Cassidy's death too. There's also the odd thing where he had to dye his hair blonde for the role. Suspiciously matching Vanessa. I feel like if he was Cassidy, they would have said so by now. He and Vanessa have been in the same room. But it's still odd. They're both Golden Freddy, too. But hey, the FNaF movies could just be a conspiracy to mess up as many actors' haircuts as possible. Look at Mike Schmidt in the second movie. The second FNaF movie seems to imply that Blondie isn't the vengeful spirit either. But they both seem to have a particular rage when it comes to William, and some control over him. The vengeful spirit connects to him somehow, and Blondie manages to keep him trapped in the back room. I really don't know what this kid's deal is. He left before he could explain himself. We can't stay in these bodies anymore. Your body isn't here, man. Listen, when I was watching the end of the movie and I heard Foxy, I thought Foxy was gonna get Michael's ass. Then, when he ran out, I thought Golden Freddy was gonna get him. There is no poetic justice in the world, man. I still hope Vanessa pulled a bite of 83 on this kid, but I'm doubting it. Whatever. I can have dreams. Part 8. Conclusion. This movie is an elaborate swap AU. It's written like a fanfic. It definitely suffers the disease of being in the middle of a trilogy, but it's fun. I'm not immune to haha reference, look, it's Circus Baby. I don't think switching around the characterization is inherently bad. These are different characters, and they've lived wildly different lives. Instead, I think the flaws in the characterization come from the amount of stuff crammed in. Characters do things for the plot instead of because that's what they do. Everyone seems to do things at extremes without motivation, and frankly, the more characters they add, the less fleshed out earlier characters get to be. When they're not talking about the science fair, we're just watching somebody who is meant to be Michael Afton of some sort entering the FNaF 2 restaurant. They can't even all go at the same time because if they do, the universe will implode on itself. If Circus Baby turns out to be Elizabeth, and I mean she has green eyes, then we have 4 Elizabeths. We are running out of room for Elizabeths. I'm tired, but also people are being wrong about these characters and I need to correct them. Stay tuned because I have a lot to say on this movie. I want to explain how the movies support that Michael is the vengeful spirit. Canon is what I make of it.